Half a day, Zentiro CNMI. Welcome to another episode of CNMI Talks. I am your host, John Mendiola, and with me today is my co-host, Glenn Maratita.
Hey guys, what's up?
Thank you guys for supporting our podcast. We're forever grateful. We just found out that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. In recognition, I went on Facebook and asked y'all to give us some questions for today's topic, which is self-care. For today's episode is something we've never done before because we have a special guest to bring light on the subject.
Please allow me to introduce Ms. Denise Mendiola, a PSS educator who teaches at Sinopala Elementary School in Rhoda, who not only is a teacher but also has a bachelor's degree in psychology from California State University in Sacramento. She's been an educator at PSS for 6 years, and we are so lucky to have her join us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're so honored to have you as our guest for today's discussion.
The honor is all mine.
So, the first question our audience wants to know is, what does self-care mean to you? Because I never really thought about this question. I just do it to take care of myself. So what does it mean to you?
So self-care seemed like such an underrated topic when I moved here in 2016. And to be honest, I've never considered the importance of self-care until recently. Self-care to me is the practice of taking action in protecting or enhancing your well-being. It's something you do for yourself that keeps you sane. It's building yourself up
Agreed.
so that you can live a life that you don't feel like you need to escape from. I've learned the importance of self-care the hard way. As mentioned, I'm a teacher and I teach third grade. So in the beginning, I was so focused on my students, which of course I still am, but it was to the point where I would neglect my physical and mental well-being.
Oh no, was it really that bad? It must have been stressful, especially when you're not taking care of your needs.
Believe it or not, I would barely drink water or eat because I was too afraid to sit down and let the kids be. Sometimes I wouldn't even use the restroom until they left the campus. Those are ways that I neglected my physical health. And as far as mental, all I would do was work. So I was at work all day. And when I went home, I was still doing work. I would grade papers, do lesson plans. I'm also an AmeriCorps site supervisor, so I have to run tutorials for additional students and monitor high school students who are under the program. So I have all these additional duties. I would get so anxious and nervous, and of course, I was stressed all the time. I'm also a mother, so I also feel like I wasn't giving enough attention to my daughter. So I was very unhappy, exhausted, and pretty much burnt out. So eventually, I realized that I just needed to rest. I needed to breathe. Exactly. That's where self-care came in. So when I prioritized time for myself, I felt much better. I was happier, and I came to realize the more important things in life. Yes, my job is important. Yes, my students are important to me. But if I don't take care of myself and I'm miserable when I go to work, it creates that ripple effect. Everything else will become miserable around me. It affects the effort I put into my work. It also affects the people around you. They wouldn't want to be around someone who's always stressed and uptight. Do you guys want to be around people like that?
No.
No,
of course
right?
not.
Exactly. So that was something that I had to change, and practicing self-care made me a much healthier and happier person.
Wow, hearing your story is so inspiring. Prioritizing myself is something I would definitely do more of, physically and mentally. So our audience next question is, do you think self-care is more important now, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Definitely. The COVID pandemic has been insane for the entire world. Everyone was in shock. We were living in fear, worry. We were concerned for our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a really hard time for all of us. And it's unfortunate that we have to experience this type of crisis, but in a way, I feel that it taught us something so important. And self-care is one of those lessons.
Agreed.
Okay, so yeah, when the world quote unquote paused, since we had to be on lockdown and quarantine, it was nice to relax and not worry so much.
Oh yeah.
Quality time was spent with our families, and we all understood the importance of that. I began to bake a lot over time, and baking is something I thoroughly enjoy, but I had to stop doing because I was just so busy, caught up in work. And it was nice to get back into it and have that feeling of excitement to make something new and have my family try it out. So COVID taught me that it's okay to relax and do something for myself. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to relax. So even when COVID is no longer a threat to us, I hope people continue to practice self-care.
The pandemic has definitely put a strain on our mental well-being. And yes, I also do believe it's so much more important now more than ever. The community should learn more from this and apply it to their daily lives. Now, our next question is, as an educator, what are the effects of COVID-19 on your mental health and your students' mental health?
So COVID-19 put such a deep strain on my mental health as an educator. I had to adapt to the virtual world in a matter of weeks. I was new to virtual learning, so I had to put in extra time to learn how to present my lessons to my students. And on top of that, as I mentioned, I teach third grade, so I had to find ways to make my lessons engaging. You know how little kids can be, right?
Yeah.
So I was so stressed sitting in front of the computer all day talking to my students. It stressed me out even more when I would ask a question and all I would get was silence. Yeah, so I couldn't force them to turn on their cameras. I had to find other ways to see if they were paying attention and learning.
So, how did you do it?
So I had to do research on my own. I found an online application called Nearpod, which helped me track each student's activity during a live session. But then again, that just added an extra thing on my plate. It gave me an extra thing that I had to do. So I became even more stressed. So in regards to my students, their mental health was deeply affected as well. As mentioned, I'm a psychology major, and I know how essential social interactions are for developing children. It helps build certain skills such as communication, self-esteem, and connections with others. These are essential skills to have as an individual. And I know their emotional well-being was also affected. A lot of them missed their school, they missed their friends, they were tired of being locked in and wanted to go out. So they wanted things to go back to how they were, and it was hard for them too. So this is why it's so important to do things for ourselves and strengthen our mental state. And as an educator, you try to fill those gaps with social emotional activities to get our kids to interact virtually and allow them to continue to build those relationships no matter what.
Wow. Sharing your knowledge and experience really puts us into perspective and makes us just appreciate educators even more if possible. But it's not over yet. We have a little segment for you called Mythbusters.
Ooh.
So we basically state myths about self-care, and your job is to enlighten us and our audience if they're completely a myth or if there's some truth in them.
Sounds fun. Let's do it.
Okay, so our first myth is self-care is selfish. Now tell us if this is true or if it's a myth.
That is a big myth. There's a quote that comes to mind when you said self-care is selfish, and the quote goes, "Self-care doesn't mean me first, it means me too." So self-care is a must. You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others, and I'm sure you guys have heard that before.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you, Miss Denise. I also think self-care is a must and it's just time for yourself. Okay, our next myth. So tell us, is self-care free? Now this is a myth I want to know more about.
Is self-care free? Yes. Self-care doesn't have to be extreme. You don't need to go on an extravagant vacation or pay for a spa treatment. Self-care can be done in many forms. Something that I do, showing gratitude, is one way. Reflecting and thinking of things that you're blessed with and being grateful for those blessings, that really goes a long way. Self-care could be just going out for a walk, just getting some fresh air and having some time away from others. It could simply be just taking a few deep breaths in order to relax. You can practice self-care anywhere and anytime.
Okay, now for our last myth. Is self-care just for women?
Absolutely not. Self care is for everyone. Everyone needs to take care of themselves. You know how your Wi-Fi acts up sometimes?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like taking forever for your screen to load or your movie to play. What do you usually do?
I don't know about John, but I would reset my router, maybe turn it off and turn it back on.
Exactly. So you unplug it for a few minutes and plug it back in, right? And when you do that, how does your Wi-Fi work?
It works now. Everything is loading smoothly.
Yeah, so your screen and your movies are playing smoothly. So believe it or not, it's kind of the same concept. So almost everything will work when you unplug it for a few minutes. So that includes you. So make some time to unplug yourself and restore yourself from time to time.
True. It really does feel good to unplug, especially from work and other responsibilities. Before we get more into it, Glenn, how are we on time?
Let's see, John. It's 4:15.
Aw, unfortunately, our time is running out, so we're going to have to close this segment. But don't worry, we'll have more next week. Once again, thank you, Miss Denise, for taking some of your time to educate us and our audience.
Thank you. I'm glad I can share my experience with you, and I hope it helps you take better care of yourselves and everyone else.
Yeah, thank you again. I learned so much talking about self-care. One thing I could take away from this session is that self-care has a ripple effect. So take care of yourself first and others.
And my takeaway from this discussion would be to prioritize your overall well-being, physically and mentally. Everyone tends to forget simple things like hydration and a healthy diet. So physiological needs are just as important.
Thank you guys. See you next week.
Thank you. Goodbye.